Hello there. In today's video, we're going to go over how to kill tanks with starter weapons, from a starter to intermediate level, going over preparations, the 3 key combat rules, and tips for each class of tank. If you have any other suggestions, feel free to leave them in the comments for the fellow resistance members who need them. The general who wins the battle makes many calculations in his temple before the battle is fought. The general who loses makes but few calculations beforehand. In order to take on any tank with no weapons, you need to make sure to prepare beforehand. Having plenty of medkits and ammo are a must, as well as any grenades, fireworks and flares you get can help turn the tide of a battle. Areas I suggest for finding these early game are Veslan Bunker, Saltholmen Naval Base, and Skarvan Bunker, which can all be found in the Archipelago region. These should contain all the ammo etc. that you need, as well as some much needed weapons, an AG4, a 44 Magnus, and a clock from Veslan, grenade launcher from Saltholmen, and an HP5 from Skarvan. You should also make sure to pick up the Algostad Sar rifle from the clock tower in Saltholmen Church, or the Mesur hunting rifle from the Hunter mission. These are all guaranteed spawns, and while not necessary, will help a lot and are easier to get before you meet your first tank. Once you have everything you need, it's time to start fighting a tank. One mark of a great soldier is that he fight on his own terms, or fight not at all. The battlefield decides much of how the fight goes when fighting a tank. The amount and type of cover there is, the amount of explosives in the environment, and the elevation can all greatly impact the outcome of the fight. While all cover in Generation 0 has its own flaws, there are definitely some that are better than others. For example, trees can block bullets, but only very few and only from one angle, allowing multiple enemies to easily overwhelm you, or some stray bullets to hit parts of you that aren't hidden by the tree. Large rocks are great for blocking shockwave attacks, as well as bullets, however suffer against mortar attacks and gas attacks. Buildings offer great protection from both bullets, shockwaves and mortar attacks, as well as half-open doors, providing great one-way shooting positions. However, gas attacks will make quick work of anyone who hides in these while fighting against enemies that have them. The type of cover that you use will depend on the class of the tank, which we'll go over later in the video. Whatever you do, make sure you don't engage a tank in the middle of a field when underprepared, as a lack of cover will mean it's very hard to escape or emerge victorious, usually ending up with you dead. Both the high and low ground have their advantages in Generation 0. If you're above a tank with a mortar attack, it becomes very hard to dodge them, as the attacks land quicker. However, if you're below the opponent, it's harder to see their weak points as many of them will be covered. Most of the time, the best battlefield is on a flat area, giving none of the advantages or disadvantages. However, the ideal is getting high enough that their mortar attacks can't hit you. The whole secret lies in confusing the enemy so that he cannot fathom our real intent. Consumables are very useful in the early game, and plentiful if you look in the right places. Knowing what each consumable does and when to use it makes an impossible fight into a possible one. Flares and fireworks both take the attention off you, but in different ways. Flares add an extra target for machines to attack, taking most of the fire. However, enemies, especially higher level ones, can still target you. Meanwhile, fireworks are more effective on all enemies and completely remove any aggression, returning them to their calm status for the time that the firework is out. While fireworks are definitely better than flares, if you land a sticky flare on the tank while there are other enemies nearby, the enemies will attack the tank for you. Small EMPs can stack up to 5 and can stun prototype tanks for 10 seconds, giving plenty of time to do some major damage. Larger EMPs are harder to pull off as you have to get in close, put them under the tank and then shoot them. However, if the opportunity presents itself, you can stun the tank for a long period of time. Explosives canisters are rarely useful mid-battle, as you have to get in very close to the enemy in order to place it, only to do 15% damage on prototype tanks, and as low as 3% on FNIX Tanks. You also won't have access to high level lures at this point, so trying to lure a tank over to a trap will probably make it harder for you. Fuel cans can be useful, but should only be used when the tank is EMP'd. Large fuel cans doing 25% of the damage to a prototype tank, and medium fuel cans doing 7.5%. However, the saving grace of consumables are grenades, doing 20% to a prototype tank. This means you can completely destroy a prototype tank with only 5 grenades, which you can easily get from Western Bunker. If you know the enemy and know yourself, you need not fear the result of 100 battles. Crowd control and enemy prioritization is key for when things get messy in a battle. In most battles, other machines will notice the sound of gunfire and run over to see what's going on. Prioritizing enemies in the right order will help finish the fight quickly and efficiently. Any seekers that show up should always be taken down as quickly as possible, as if given the chance, they'll call what seems like every machine on the planet to take you down. If there's a harvester present, which if you pick your battles well there rarely should be, it should almost always be your next biggest target, as it can summon in hunters. After this, prioritize any hunters going for ones with mortar attacks or sniper attacks first, leaving fleshy shotguns to last as they're easy to dodge and only do damage when up close. After this, it depends on your skill level at dodging. If you're feeling confident, you should focus on the tank, ignoring any runners as their attacks are easy to dodge, taking out any that get too close to you. Otherwise, focus on runners, taking out rocket doggos first, followed by SMG and then shotgun. However, this is all loose, and if you're taking heavy damage, you should focus on the enemy giving it to you, unless it's a tank, which should most of the time be at the bottom of the priority list, due to its high HP. Learning prioritization is a skill that comes with time, but when you can do it effectively, it will make all the difference. Prototype tanks always have a machine gun and a missile launcher, alongside the normal 3 attacks: concussion, stomp, and rush. Machine guns can be avoided by heading in a parallel direction for 2 to 3 seconds, until around halfway through the attack, and doing an 180-degree turn and heading in the other direction. However, this is hard to pull off, and you will only take a bit of damage if you simply sprint parallel to the tank for the duration of the attack. Missile launcher will predict where you're moving, and then fire multiple missiles at the location. This does a lot of damage, but can be easily dodged by simply changing direction or moving erratically. However, this does not work all the time, and you can also optionally look at the missiles in the sky and move into an area that has none, which while a lot more consistent, can be hard for new players to pick up, especially when the missiles are more spread out. The concussion attack will only occur if you get too close and has a long wind-up. However, it does a lot of damage, as well as making you ragdoll. It can be completely nullified by cover, however, so hiding behind a rock can do wonders. Stomp only occurs when you're standing under the tank. It is almost impossible to dodge. There's no reason you should be that close to a tank anyway. Rush generally only happens when it's called by a seeker or when both of its weapons are knocked off. This is easy enough to dodge by just stepping to the side. Prototype tanks have little armor, so full metal jacket or hollow point bullets do well against them. The weak cans on a prototype tank that I usually go for are its ears, which are the 2 electrical cans on either side of its head, its hat, which is a small sheriff hat looking black box on its head, and if I'm using a less accurate weapon, firing into its main plate to damage its internal battery. If it's still living after this, go for the knee and shoulder joints to finish it off. Alternatively, if you can get to the back of the tank, the fuel can and ventilation box above it are good targets as well. Generally stay mid-range, 10 to 20 meters away from the tank, keeping some form of cover between you and the tank at all times, and things will go well. Like the prototype tank, the military tank will always have a machine gun and a chance to have a missile launcher, so deal with these as said before. They also have a tick pod on their back, which can be a pain when fighting up close, but is easily damaged, usually getting knocked off when the fuel can explodes. So if you're at the back of the tank, focus on the fuel can over the tick pod. If possible, don't shoot the ticks and dodge them instead, focusing on the larger enemies as they only have one predictable attack that can be dodged by a sidestep, and they explode themselves a while after being deployed. They also have a chance to fire a mortar that deals very high damage and hits where the player is at the time the shot is fired. This is indicated by an orange spark and hissing sound. If you see or hear this, sprint in one direction until you hear or see the attack land, and only then move back to your original position if need be. This is easy enough to dodge if it's just you in the tank. However, if there are multiple enemies, the small indicators that a mortar attack is coming can be easily overlooked. Its melee attacks are identical, however it rarely uses concussion, instead opting for a new attack, gas release. This releases gas which can be easily dodged, and as long as you don't spend too much time in the cloud, does little damage. This can however bypass cover such as buildings and rocks, and is especially detrimental if you're in a building, as it takes time to get out of the building and out of the gas. It can also decrease visibility, however this isn't too bad of an effect. It has a lot more armor than the prototype, so unless you have plenty of ammo, I would advise against firing at its main faceplate. Instead, go for its ears, leg electrical panels, eye, fuel can and ventilation, as these should be mostly unarmored and take away most of its health. Generally, keep 5 to 10 meters away from the tank, as it can't use many of its attacks effectively at longer range, especially mortar, and its melee attacks are much weaker than prototype. But try to avoid getting in closer than 5 meters to avoid its stomp attack, and little dodging time for its machine gun. FNIX Tanks share the exact same attacks as the military variant, however in my research they tend towards the stronger weapons such as machine gun and missile launcher. What makes them harder is the upgraded tick pod, going from military ticks, armor plated, to FNIX, explosive, as well as more HP and armor. I would highly recommend stocking up on armor piercing ammo, specifically when using low style weapons against these guys. Strategy for dodging all of its attacks is the same as before, except this time, prioritize shooting ticks and getting the tick pod off, as these guys can do a lot of damage. I'd prioritize getting behind it before it notices you, and taking out its fuel can and tick pod, and quickly moving on to its ventilation. After this, try using your armor piercing ammo to break through its main faceplate until you see blue sparks, and then switch to full metal jacket to break most of its internal components. If it's still standing, take out its ears, knees and shoulders, as these should have little armor. I would advise taking these guys out at a longer range, opting for assault rifles and snipers over SMGs, with an optimum range of over 30 meters away from the tank, or even further if you have a good sniper rifle. However, if you can knock off their machine gun and tick pod, they pose no danger in the 5 to 10 meter range except their gas attack, so if you just stay inside this range, they can't do much against you. To put it simply, no, you shouldn't be trying to take down an apocalypse tank until at least 4 or 5 crown weapons, especially for new players. However, if you do want to attempt a suicide mission, the apocalypse has upgraded versions of most attacks that the tank already has in its arsenal, adding a damage over time incendiary effect to both the machine gun and concussion attack, making mortar attacks have a wider range with cluster mines that are easy to step on in the heat of battle and can roll down hills. The ticks released by the tick pods have again been upgraded to the new toxic variants, dealing major damage over time and slightly obstructing vision. However, from a long range, specifically over 200 meters away, especially if you're higher vertically, the tank can do nothing against you, as its long range attack mines are very inaccurate, firing many over a large area, never landing directly on you if you stand still while the attack happens. With enough ammo and a sniper rifle, you will eventually be able to take down an apocalypse without taking any damage. The best locations for this are the multiple sniping towers on Himfjall Island, like the one at Lyset Commune. The armor on these guys is very strong, so upfront attacks with lower tier weapons will be ineffective. So early game, if you attempt to take these guys out, it's the only way. And that's everything. Hopefully this will help you take down a toaster or two, and if not, feel free to leave some constructive criticism in the comments. However, if this did help, it would mean a lot if you could leave some support on the video, as well as leaving any suggestions on what to do next. You can also watch any of our other Generation Zero videos, such as our gun tier list and our no gun run. Have a great day, and see you later.